So, good morning, everybody. We'll make a start. Thank you for joining today's session. I'm Sean Gibb. I'm the Events and Marketing Manager at Pro Manchester, and I'm delighted to welcome you to Using Coaching to Build Back Better and Prepare Your Business for the New Normal, hosted by Grant Thornton. Following today's session, I'll send out a post-event email, which will contain any post-event collateral from today's session, links to where you can find out about other Pro Manchester events, and it will also include our feedback survey. It would really help us and be really appreciated if you could take just 1 minute to fill that in. It really is a short survey, but it really helps us to continue to provide great content and feedback to our hosts as well. Just a few points of housekeeping. Please be aware that this session is being recorded. Feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions, make any comments, observations, and we'll address those as the session goes on or a little later. Please, can I ask that you all keep your microphones on mute just to ensure we have the best possible sound quality. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Sue Legard, Talent Solutions Service Delivery Manager, Marketing and Business Development at Grant Thornton.
So thank you, Sean, and good morning, everyone, and welcome. So we're very excited to be hosting our first Grant Thornton event with Pro Manchester, and thank you, Sean, for all your help and support in organising this. So although Sean has already introduced me, I'll introduce myself again. So I'm Sue Legard and I am the Talent Solutions Service Delivery Manager for the Northwest, and together with my colleague Rob Wright. So hi Rob.
Morning everyone. Morning.
We advise and support local businesses around their talent and skills development requirements. And we are particularly lucky to have with us today Grant Thornton's Head of Coaching Services, Sam Isaacson. Hi, Sam. Sam's going
Hi.
to hi. A bit late there on the
yes,
there,
I couldn't find the
button. And Sam's going to share with us today his own coaching expertise and insights as to how embedding a coaching culture within your organisation can really totally transform it. And in the session today, we'll be discussing what coaching is, and I think equally as important, what it isn't. Why is it so important? How Grant Thornton successfully uses coaching internally, and the different pathways available for coaching development. And just before we start, just to give you a bit of background on Sam. So in addition to the fantastic coaching work he does at Grant Thornton, he is an accredited coach and sits on the advisory board of one of the largest coaching professional bodies, the International Coaching Federation, or ICF. And he's also the chair of the Apprenticeship Trailblazer group that designed the standards for the coaching professional level 5 qualification. And also, being the very modest chap that he is, I'm sure he won't mind me telling you that he's also written several books, the latest of which, How to Thrive as a Coach in a Digital World, Coaching with Technology, is being published on the 23rd of August and is available now to pre-order on Amazon. So, Sam, over to you.
Brilliant, thank you. Just finding that mute button again, and I'm just going to share my screen. It's brilliant to be with you today, everyone, so thank you so much for having me. It's a shame that I can't see everyone's faces, and so I'll probably ask you in a moment if you'll turn your cameras on so that I can see who you are. But before we get there, I always like in my presentations to start with just a minute of mindfulness to get us present in the space that we're in, more for me than for you, if I'm really honest, because I think when I have the nerves of presenting in front of any group, even if it's virtually, I think I perform better if I've just taken a moment to slow myself down. So I'd just like to invite you, wherever you are, whether you're sitting or standing, just to enter a neutral pose and allow your body to gently relax. Maybe start to take some deep breaths in through your nose and then out through the mouth. trying to take about twice as long breathing out as you can breathing in, if that's possible. And if you're comfortable doing it, then just close your eyes and just check through your body, right from the top of your head all the way down to your feet. Check each muscle as you're going and just allow your body to relax as you keep on breathing in deeply through your nose and out through your mouth. And we'll just do this for a few more seconds. Why don't you start counting your breaths and see how many deep breaths you can take. And if you're feeling ready, then you can open your eyes. It is great to be with you today. I'd love it if you would turn your screens on so that I can see whom I'm speaking to. For those that have believed the lie that by turning off your camera, you suddenly get better signal across Zoom, I'm afraid it's not true, because there are two different sorts of data transfer. One is upload and one is download, and the amount you're uploading has no bearing on the amount that you're downloading. So if you turn your camera on, it shouldn't affect how much you're able to see of other people. If you do have a problem with connection, if you make the Zoom screen much smaller, then it means the number of pixels it's having to download is smaller, and so you'll probably get a better connection that way if that's a problem for you. Just a helpful hint, nothing to do with coaching, but you know, always like to add value. Okay, so we've had our mindful minute together, and before we get into the real content, it would be really helpful for me to know what sort of questions are coming up for you as far as coaching is concerned. And so you're here for a reason. Something has triggered your curiosity when you saw the title, or maybe even just saw the name Grant Thornton. And so maybe if you just bring that chat window up and just drop in a question or two of some things that are occurring to you right now before I've shared anything. I can't promise that I'm going to deal with them straight away, because I do have some content that I'd like to share. But if they're there, then it does mean that I'll sort of know where people's minds are at, and that might help. So I'll just give 30 seconds, maybe just think of what's your biggest question around coaching at the moment, and just drop it in the chat. Brilliant. I can see that a couple are appearing, but I can't see what they are, which is really helpful actually, because it means I'm not going to get distracted by the content. So I'm just going to ask you to quickly finish off firing those questions in, which is great. And we're going to move on to the next thing, in which I'm going to ask you to get out your mobile phones, please. If you could please head to menti.com. And when you do that on your mobile phone, it will ask you to type in a code. You can do it on your on your screen as well while you're accessing this. It should work exactly the same. When you go onto menti.com, it will ask you to type in that code there. And so if you just type in that code, it should ask you a question. And the question is, how would you describe coaching in 3 words? And there should be 3 spaces to allow you to type in your answers. So would you mind please trying to just quickly do that? And I'm going to bring up on the screen the answers. It's all going to be completely anonymous, but we're going to see them appearing on the screen as you submit them. So hopefully this will work. The code has now moved to the very top of the screen in case you've missed that. Let's just see what comes up. Great, thank you. So I'm not sure who it was who submitted that first one, but we've got a couple of words up there already. Let's see how many more we can get contributed. I should probably do the same thing, shouldn't I? Great, looks like we've still got a couple of responses coming in, which is great. Okay, probably getting there now. Thank you. Well, it's very interesting seeing those words that are just up on the screen, isn't it? So when the word coaching is mentioned, and these are the sorts of words that come in: listening, supporting, reflection, increasing, motivating, enlightenment, curiosity, empowering, engaging, focus, guided discovery, confidential. That's an important word, isn't it? Unstructured. It's interesting. I think the word coaching has got some interesting concepts that are aligned to it that aren't necessarily to do with the concept of coaching as I talk about it. So we talk about sports coaching. We talk about some managers who tell the people that they're line managing, I think I just need to coach you a bit on this. And they don't mean coaching in the same way that I mean it. And so let me just share with you what I mean when I'm talking about coaching, what we as Grant Thornton mean when we're talking about coaching. And then we'll be able to explain sort of why it's helpful in that way. So coaching for me is made up of two pillars. It's about support and it's about challenge. The support pillar is basically, it's made up of three ingredients. One of those ingredients, and it came up on that slide, which is great. One of those ingredients is it's a confidential conversation. So anything that is discussed when I am coaching you isn't going to go anywhere else. There are certain reasonable exceptions to that. So if I'm required to disclose it by law, then I'm going to do that. And for my own personal development as a coach, then I might share some of those conversations with my supervisor in confidence for my own development, but I'll be focusing on myself, not on the content of the conversation. But the fact that it's confidential means that somebody who is receiving that coaching feels much more confident to share something that in other circumstances they might not, because they're scared of where it might go. So that's really important, and it increases the level of support they're going to feel. The conversation is also non-directive. What I mean by that is, as a coach, I'm not going to provide advice to the people that I'm coaching. I'm going to follow the agenda of the person that I'm coaching, and they're going to be the ones that are providing the direction. So it isn't directionless, but the direction isn't coming from me as the coach. It's coming from the person who's receiving the coaching. So they're going to say, I would like to get a promotion. How should I go about that? And I'm going to respond to that simply by going, how do you think you should go about it? Or some other equally annoying question that is going to put all of the thinking in the space of the person receiving the coaching. This makes it powerful because it means that the solutions that we generate in the coaching conversations are generated in the mind of the coachee. And so they are fully empowered to make those decisions themselves, and they're actually more likely to follow them through. You can tell somebody to do something and they're going to perform it to a certain level, but if they've decided to do that of their own volition, they're much more likely to go through with it. The conversation is also going to be non-judgmental. Now, we want to be non-judgmental generally in life, don't we? It's not nice to feel like you're being judged, but it also has a bit of a positive tone to it in terms of somebody says, oh, I think I should do such and such. And we respond by going, that's a great idea. Well, we've just pronounced a judgment. And in coaching, and actually, I'm not going to judge you positively or negatively. So when you say my line manager is being an idiot, and I'm not going to agree or disagree with that statement, I'm simply going to neutrally listen attentively and respond with a question. And what this does is it triggers critical thinking in the mind of the coachee. Because if I say to you, I think that I should quit my job, somebody who says, I don't think you should quit your job, is going to make me defensive. No, I think I really should. And if you agree with me and say, yeah, you definitely should, and all that's done is just underline it. So actually, in both cases, if I'm being judgmental positively or negatively, it makes no difference to my opinion. But if I say, I think you should quit your job, and the response that comes back is, and what do you think about that really? There's no judgment behind that question, but suddenly, as the person on the receiving end of the coaching, I'm able to actually analyze what it is that I'm saying and be a lot more neutral about it. So, and that environment makes it very supportive. It means you can have very difficult conversations. So there's a particular leader that I was coaching in the middle of last year who was trying to think about diversity and inclusion in their organization. They're a white male, white middle-class, middle-aged man, wanting to increase diversity and inclusion in their organization, wanting to do it the right way, thinking he's probably racist and doesn't know what to do with that and has no space to explore that at all. In a conversation with me, he knows I'm not going to be judged. This conversation is not going to go anywhere, and there's not going to be any advice given that tells me that I'm white and privileged. It's just going to be a space for me to be able to explore and come up with some solutions that are going to work for me. It's incredibly powerful. But support by itself is not good enough, because a nice supportive conversation, that's called being a friend. A coach is going to add a serrated edge of challenge that really takes where you are as the person on the receiving end of the coaching and unpicks at those assumptions that you have that make you say those things and makes you truly uncomfortable, because when you're uncomfortable, then you're learning. And coaching really is a space of learning and discovering about yourself and about the systems that you interact with, the organization that you're part of, and the consequences that some of your actions have wider than that on your supply chain, on your customers, on your employees. And so being able to have that real sense of challenge and be able to ask that question, what are you assuming that is making you think that's a sensible solution? It is a great space to be. Now, why is this powerful? Well, if you have a low level of support or a low level of challenge, then you end up with different environments being created. So if we've got low support and low challenge, then we're bored. So if I'm not being supported by somebody and I'm not being challenged, I've just been sent an email in the morning saying, if you'd like to get around to it at some point, here's a report that you could read. You might find it helpful. It's just a state of boredom. If I've got a really high level of support, so, my line manager is really friendly, constantly on the phone, just telling me how great I am, but the level of challenge that I've got is very low, then it's not an unpleasant place to be. It's quite relaxing, actually. It's very friendly. It's not particularly productive. If I'm in a place where I've got a high level of challenge and a low level of support, then that can be very stressful. And let's be honest, over the last year, 18 months, that has been the case for most of us. We haven't felt like we've had the support. Just before we were coming on, then we were talking about school teachers and how I've got 4 children. One of the teachers of one of my kids has been teaching for decades, has almost never had to use a computer. And suddenly, within a very short period of time, suddenly had to go to doing everything online with, as far as I could tell, a very low level of support to go with that. And I could tell, just being in the kitchen while my kids were being taught, that, she was not being particularly effective as a teacher, but she's a great teacher. It's a very difficult place to be. If you are able to create an environment where you've got a really high level of support and a really high level of challenge at the same time, then people enter into a state of flow where we're constantly tipping that balance of things are quite uncomfortable, but I know that everything's going to be all right. And so I can try things and take risks and come up with new ideas and be innovative and experiment with things that maybe I'm not sure if they're going to work, but I know that even if they don't, then everything's going to be okay. It's a very powerful place to be. And as our organizations move back into this sort of, we're not quite there yet, but a post-pandemic way of operating where some people are remote and some people are not, and people want to interact in all kinds of different ways, and we're not quite sure what it's going to look like, and technology is coming in as a disruptor. The ability to think on our feet and know that we've got that support to be able to do that and experiment properly is what's going to unlock real growth and protect businesses from some of the negative consequences of that disruption. So let's just assume for a moment that we have a good understanding of what coaching is and that we understand that it's a good idea. What's the best way to go about it? Well, as an organization, we introduced our coach development, we introduced our coaching culture back in 2011, I think that it started. For us, then that looked like an accredited coach development program that we rolled out to about 200 of our senior leaders in the UK and about 500 worldwide. That's, you know, it's taken several years for us to move to the place that we are in, but it ended up in 2020 as winning an award from the EMCC, which is the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. I don't know why they don't just lose the word European, because it's a global professional body, but there you go. So we won the award in 2020 for organizations, and it's because of the coaching culture that we've developed and the quality assurance metrics and governance that we've got over our coaching globally, including particularly in the UK. We're probably most mature here. What this meant is that when the lockdown came in last year, lots of businesses panicked. Our leaders had some conversations. They immediately came back and had some good communications across the firm that said, we don't really know what we're meant to be doing here, but we're going to come up with something and we're going to get back to you soon. Which felt like, that's a silly thing to do. Surely as leaders, just make a decision and tell us, you know, that everything's going to be okay. And they refused to do that. But what they did say was, we're going to have 3 priorities. We're going to protect our people. We're going to protect our business. We're going to protect our clients. We're going to do those 3 things. And it took them a few weeks of discussing kind of exactly what it was going to look like. It looked like our results were going to be 20% down on what they were projected to be. And so a lot of organizations at that point cut 20% of their workforce or sent people on furlough. The leadership decided that it would be ethically wrong for us to send our people on furlough because it wasn't designed for firms like us, and we didn't want to lose people. And so we asked people to drop their hours down. So everybody go down to 4 days a week, take your income down by 20%. Nobody has to lose their job. Everything's going to be okay. And that felt like just a really sensible solution at the time. You know, we're all genuinely in it together. The partners have made a decision and the staff, we can get on board with that. And then it turned out that actually our results were not 20% down. They were something like 9% down. And so the leaders, they went back and thought, well, if we knew that they were going to be 9% down at the beginning of lockdown, what would we have done differently? And they concluded, well, we wouldn't have sent people home. So we're going to take what they would have earned if they'd have stayed working full time. We'll pay everybody back, which is not needed. It was just going the extra mile, doing something that wasn't necessary. You know, there was no obligation on them to do that, but it was the right thing to do based on their priorities and our values. And it just feels to me like if we didn't have a coaching mindset, there's no way we'd have come up with that solution. And then in the new year, you know, we were into now our 3rd lockdown and things were starting to get a little bit tough again. People were, people's well-being was being affected by it. As a firm on the whole, you know, I think people were generally doing all right, but we were doing these well-being pulse surveys. And one pulse survey showed a little bit of a dip, that with the homeschooling and everything, it was a real challenge. Like I said, I've got 4 kids. So doing homeschooling, plus got a full-time job, plus I'm writing this book and everything else that's got going on. You know, I was really feeling it personally. And the leaders, they had a conversation about it and they came out and said, right, we recognize well-being's a bit tough. So we're going to give people 2 extra days off just for well-being. And you have to use them by 1st of May, just because that was when there was a new cycle coming in. And if you don't feel that you need both because, you know, you're doing okay actually, and you don't need that one, then you can give one of your days back. You have to take one, but you can give one day back into a central pool. And then those people that do need an extra one can request a 3rd day, and you can just take it just as a gift to make sure that you're all right. These things just feel like really good ways of doing the right thing and looking after your people and having that sort of coaching focus, which increases that level of support. Like I was saying, the last year and so has felt like a high level of challenge. That's felt like it's increased the support, and then it's had a really positive impact on people. So where to start? Well, got to think about when coaching doesn't work first. And there are two big places it doesn't work. One is where the person who is on the receiving end of the coaching just isn't ready for coaching. And the reason that they're not ready is because they've decided in their mind that they aren't. So there's a good chance that there might be somebody on the phone, on this call here today, that is hearing my voice and listening to me talk and just go, I'm glad that I don't need to have a conversation with Sam all the time. And that's okay, because it just shows that you're not ready for me to be your coach. Maybe somebody else would be the right coach for you. And sometimes people just believe, I want you to just tell me how to do it. Things are going too slowly. I want to go and ask how I can do something, and I want the answer to be given to me straight away. If you're not in the right mindset to be coached, there's nothing that I can do that can change your mind overnight. And so that's important. Get people ready for it. The second thing is the skills and experience and knowledge of the person who's delivering the coaching. When you first set out on your sort of coaching journey, you first learn a coaching model, you tend to learn pretty linear, straightforward models that help to incrementally improve performance. And that's good, right? It adds value. But it's not as powerful as some of the more advanced coaching methods that actually you need a lot of bravery and experience to use and to know how to use properly without things falling apart, particularly with characters that can be quite challenging, particularly at more senior levels. They've got to that level of responsibility and challenge for a reason, and suddenly having to deal with them in a coaching conversation where they just want you to really add value and show it very quickly is very challenging. And so you need to make sure that you've got to develop the right knowledge, skills, and experience to be able to do that properly. So in practice, this is a model that we have developed with our clients and with the professional bodies, with input from a range of academics. There isn't much research that's been done, which is surprising, really, into how to use coaching within organizations. There's a lot that's been done at a sort of coaching conversation level, so coach and coachee, increasing the value of that conversation, but not a huge amount that's been done around coaching as an organizational development tool. And what this does is it shows how to embed coaching within an organization. This is the top layer of a sort of 3-layer model that we've got that we can use to advise our clients. And so we're going to talk through what that looks like. And in most organizations, then they start delivering coaching at this deliver stage. So what that looks like in practice is there's an individual that we see as a high potential, and we'd like to invest in them. Or maybe it's that we'd like to, give somebody an extra benefit as part of their rewards package. And so we're going to hand over a little bit of coaching to them to, entice them to stick around a little bit more. And so they think, oh, well, I worked with such and such who's a coach before, so I'll give them a call and they're available to come and do it. And I trust them. And this coach says, I'm going to coach you in 6 sessions. Why the number 6? It's just a magic number. There's no real research that says that 6 is right, but people say it's 6. The reason is because when therapy was first introduced to the NHS, budgets stretched to 6 sessions, and then we've just stuck with it as a profession ever since. But don't tell anybody, because 6 is magic. So you come up with this delivery method and you start to deliver some coaching, and there you go. It's fine. Coaching is happening. It's not very mature, but it's quite pragmatic. It kind of gets it introduced. After you've started to deliver, then you can start to assure. So if you're more mature, then you're going to check back and go, well, you said you were going to do 6. And it turns out that actually of the 50 people that we need coaching, 20 of them have stopped receiving coaching after 4, and 10 of them have asked for an extra 2 sessions. So what does that mean? What do we need to learn as an organization in order to improve the quality of that delivery? Actually, maybe 6 is the wrong number. Or maybe there's something that's going on where at more junior levels, they just need 1 or 2 sessions to get them through a particularly hard patch because of a performance review or something, and then they learn, and so they don't need any more. And at more senior levels, then they need an indefinite relationship where they just come to get things off their chest. Maybe. Who knows? In different organizations, it's going to be different. But until you're starting to do that quality assurance, then you're not able to ask those questions intelligently. When you know that the delivery is happening in that way and you've got your quality assurance in, then you can start to monitor the impact. This is incredibly challenging. It's almost impossible to say that somebody's had a coaching session and this action has happened and that's led to this positive outcome. The coaching costs this and we can assign this level of value to that outcome associated with the coaching, and therefore the return on investment is such and such. Particularly when you're thinking with more of the challenging coaching conversations, the impact is actually in mindset change. which pretty much can't be measured. But if you can start to think, oh, well, this population of people has received coaching and this population hasn't, and the ones that have received coaching are scoring higher in our employee engagement surveys, maybe that means something. And maybe that's a positive impact that you're looking for from your coaching. But you don't know it's what you're looking for until you've gone to the next step, which is setting the purpose for coaching. And different organizations are going to have a different purpose for it. For some, it is a performance improvement piece. Actually, we just want people to incrementally improve. And by giving them some coaching, we're going to achieve that. It's quite a pleasant way of doing it, actually. Increases engagement, increases retention. It might be that it's part of a benefits package. We were talking just before everybody was let in through the lobby, that sometimes you give people things as part of their benefits package that just means that you can get away with paying them a bit less. And actually giving somebody some executive coaching gets people in a good mood, and so you're going to hold on to them for a bit longer. Or maybe it's part of a culture change program. I mentioned diversity and inclusion before. Coaching is an incredibly efficient way of increasing diversity and inclusion in an organization. Way, way better than writing a new policy on it. You write as many documents as you want, it'll make no difference to people's mindsets. Coach them, who knows, you might actually achieve what you're setting out to try. When you know what the purpose is behind your coaching, then you can ask that question, well, what is the system going to look like? How many internal coaches do we need, and how many external coaches do we want? Because sometimes you need that balance, and sometimes you might want all of one or all of another. Particularly at more senior levels, there can be that threat of confidentiality. If you know you're talking to somebody inside an organization about questions around a merger or acquisition or a restructure, actually can feel a bit risky. So you might want some externals. Who are they going to be? Which suppliers are they going to be? What technology are you going to use to interact with to make that as efficient as possible? And which sort of development you're going to go through, which professional bodies are you going to align with, and what's the continuous development going to look like over that whole system? And of course, then that feeds into which coaching you're delivering. And so the whole thing goes in this virtuous cycle where you're constantly checking how things are going and improving things, and then updating the system and making sure that the purpose is aligned and all those good things. Talked a little bit about the Grant Thornton backstory. So we started in 2011. This is our coach development program. I'll mention this in a bit more detail in a bit, but basically we took our most senior leaders through the whole accredited program, and now our leadership development programs all include coaching foundations as part of it. So if you're a people manager, you have to be trained to be a coach. You can't be a people manager if you haven't done that. I think I'm going to pass over to Sue now, because there's a particular method of coach development that is Sue's specialism, and so I think she'll be able to speak about it a little bit more eloquently than I will.
Thank you, Sam. So some great information and insights there that I'm sure we can all take away with us. So there are two pathways. Sam's going to talk about one of those, and my specialism, as Sam puts it, is around the apprenticeships. And with more and more businesses now looking to develop and protect their future talent, they are increasingly turning to apprenticeships as the best way of upskilling their workforce. And that's whether they pay the apprenticeship levy or not. So next slide, please, Sam. And as Rishi Sunak announced in the March 21 budget, the appetite for apprenticeships and work-based learning is rising, with 70% of employers saying they believe these programs will be vital to their organisation's COVID recovery. Next slide, please, Sam. So the Coaching Professional Level 5 Apprenticeship was launched in September 2020. And as I mentioned earlier, Sam is the chair of the Trailblazer group that designed the standards and has therefore had a huge input into the content criteria. And if you're in any doubt as to the quality of the apprenticeship, I can tell you that by achieving a level 5, it's the equivalent of achieving a foundation degree. Apprenticeships are open to anyone of any age, and you do not have to be an official coach or even have the word coaching in your title to be eligible to complete one. And if you already hold a high qualification or degree, you're also eligible, providing that that qualification is in a completely different subject area to coaching. The main criteria that you'll need to complete the coaching professional apprenticeship is that you should have the opportunity to coach a minimum of 5 coachees for 50 hours in total, but that's over the 12-month period of the programme. And throughout the training programme, you'll be attending 9 2-hour training webinars, 6 one-day practical coaching workshops, and you'll be observed on 7 occasions putting your new coaching skills into practice. You'll also be allocated your own development coach who will have a one-to-one session with you every 6 weeks. You should be completing your apprenticeship approximately 15 months after you start learning, and the qualification is accredited by the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, the Association for Coaching, and the International Coaching Federation. And once you've achieved the apprenticeship, you can apply for membership of any of these professional coaching bodies. Next slide, Sam, please. So I just wanted to show you the variety of different job roles that some of our current apprentices on the coaching apprenticeship have, just to highlight the diversity and how coaching can actually fit into any job role and within any department. Next slide, Sam. So just to summarise, and obviously this is just a very quick run through what this qualification looks like. It's a 12-month learning programme with a further 3 months preparing for the endpoint assessment, when you'll be assessed by an external organisation. And there are 2 options. Apprentices can either join open cohorts along with participants from other organisations, or if a business has more than 20 people wishing to enrol, they can choose to have their own closed cohort. At the moment, the delivery model is all virtual, and as is all activity and interaction. However, with things getting back to normal, albeit slowly, this could change and probably will change fairly soon. We have quarterly open cohorts, so the next ones are starting in July and October this year. However, closed cohorts can commence at any time. And finally, the costs. So if you are a levy payer, you will pay £5,000 per person from your levy fund. And if you are not, then you will only contribute 5% of that total. So £250 in all, as the government contribution is 95%. So I'm now going to pass you back to Sam, who will explain a little bit more as to the content of the apprenticeship, seeing as he's had a hand in putting it all together, and also he'll explain a little bit more about the commercial training opportunities with Grant Thornton.
Great, thanks very much, Sue. And I am going to fly through this because I want to make sure that we've got space for questions. So this is the apprenticeship process that we follow over the 12-month period. It's made up of 4 modules. The first module is basically spending a good amount of time understanding what is it that coaching actually is, and some real foundational understanding of, just basic good questioning, good listening, what the professional bodies look like. The second module is then your skills, basic level of skills, how to contract people, how to build up rapport, what it means to be non-directive and bring that same level of challenge as I was talking about earlier. By the time that you get into and you start your coaching experience really around here, in your third module, then we start looking in some real depth at some good models. So the 2 big ones that we look at is coactive coaching, which is a very flexible, in the moment, holistic model. Uses a lot of metaphor, whereas solutions focused is slightly different. It's quite linear. It's focused on outcomes right from the outset and is quite practical and action focused. And then in the 4th module, then we look at, well, what's next then? Now that we know how to coach and we're able to coach perfectly well. What other options are there for further development? What sort of different coaches are there? And if you're a coach on the call, then you'll recognize a whole bunch of these. They're very good and they're quite varied. So NLP, Gestalt, Nancy Klein, there's some really good content in there, and so some good options. We will pause for questions. So if that was too quick, you can obviously ask, and I'm happy to go into more detail. Alongside that, it's not necessarily, they're not different options to do the same thing, because the apprenticeship option is basically free if you've paid into the levy, and so you really should go with that option. But if you're looking for something that's a little bit lighter touch, and just as the Grant Thornton approach that I described with our people managers, that gives those coaching skills without having to invest in a full year's worth of time, this is our coach development program. You can see that all of these words all at the bottom, they're basically kind of all of the different topics that we cover over the course of those 3 workshops. The first workshop is coaching foundations. So that's just this, basically, how are you able to coach well? The second workshop, you're developing experience all this time, takes it deeper into becoming a really effective coach. And so at this point, we're generally happy to give you a Grant Thornton certificate to say that you are fit to practice as an internal coach. And then if you're interested, then we are able to offer that to take it through to accreditation with the EMCC. But if this is the outcome you're aiming for, you should really go for the apprenticeship, because it's probably more cost efficient. There we go. I did fly through that, didn't I? So we were able to stop for some questions. And I noticed there were already a couple in the chat, but before I go there, it'd be good if there's anybody who's kind of got a burning question that they'd like to speak on the camera. Oh, that's a nice picture of Sue that we got on the screen there. Sue, thanks for that. Should we stick our cameras on so that we're able to see each other and maybe have a bit of a conversation? That would be great. And whoever would like to go first, you're going to be the first one to come off mute and wave your hand. So who would like to ask a question?
Do you want to start with some of the questions in the chat? Can you see the chat, Sam?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. I was just thinking, what we've just seen there, one of the core skills of being a coach is comfort with silence. You talked about discomfort earlier. Sue is obviously not quite as comfortable with it as I am. So here we go. How structured do you make your coaching sessions? That's a great question, isn't it? Who's got an answer to that? Sorry, that's such a horrible... I'll give you my personal answer. So as a coach, my sessions are incredibly emergent. I do have a bunch of models, and so if somebody says something, I tend to enter into, particularly when we're doing it remotely, I've got a little PowerPoint presentation that's just got 50 different little models and images and things that I can just sort of tap into, and I'll go, I wonder if this might be of help. I'll bring up whatever David Allen's getting things done or something, and just bring it up on the screen and get ask some questions about it. The answer is not at all structured really at a personal level, but I think this probably comes back to what I was saying earlier around coaching skill. When you are first starting out as the coach, you really do need that structure, because becoming a coach is a lot about breaking habits. There's not necessarily bad habits, but breaking the habits of wanting to make judgments, wanting to provide advice, actually that wanting to cut in when there is silence and the silence feels really uncomfortable, and knowing when to mess around with the silence and start to interrupt people and put them under a bit of pressure. Actually having a really solid model like the GROW model. I can't see everybody's face, so I don't know if everybody knows it. You give me a thumbs up if you're familiar with the GROW model. Maybe you're just a really keen coaches and so you know it, but there's a very simple linear coaching model called GROW, which is very widely used, and it is very good for performance level coaching, where all you're wanting is a bit of an iterative change. Is really helpful. But if you were to go into an executive of a FTSE listed company and try to use the GROW model in a coaching session, it just wouldn't work, because it isn't ambiguous enough. And sometimes when you're dealing with some of the challenges that come, then you need something that's a little bit more flexible. Does that answer the question, or have I just kind of fudged it by rambling? Right. I know that there are a couple more there, but let's see. Is anybody on the video got a question that they'd like to ask?
I'll jump in.
You see, what happens is when there's silence, somebody wants to fill it, so you get it there. Yeah, go ahead, Sean. Thank you.
So this kind of dovetails nicely with the next question in the comments. So Mike's written, how do you draw the line between coaching and counselling? And I was going to say, after my question, which kind of, as I say, dovetails in with that, was how can coaching be used to maybe help or assist with some typical business-based or workplace-based anxieties, such as imposter syndrome or holding difficult conversations, things like that?
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it? So I think let's go to I'll deal with that first question first, and then I'll probably sort of end up passing over to yours. So the line between coaching and counselling, this is very abstract and oversimplified, but it probably works well enough that counselling as a general rule is based on things that have happened in the past and is taking people from a state of not functioning to a sort of expected level up to that expected level. Whereas coaching is focused on present and particularly the future, and is taking people that you sort of accept as a general rule that they're already performing at that expected level, and there's a higher level of potential that they're wanting to achieve. And so coaching is a way of unlocking that higher potential. And so coaching feels a little bit more positive, a bit more future focused. That said, they're essentially the same. The world of coaching comes out of counseling, and so a lot of the skills are very similar. Therapy at times is quite judgmental, actually. I mean, it depends on which school that you sit with, really, but actually you're focused around this idea that you are not operating sufficiently, something is broken, you have got PTSD or whatever it happens to be, and we're trying to solve that problem, and now we've solved it, case closed. Well, in coaching, actually, then it's a lot more about, are you familiar with the finite game and the infinite game? It's this concept that actually the purpose of the game is for the game to keep on playing. And so actually as a coach, you're focused on what's happening after the coaching relationship is finished. There's a lot of pressure that's put, particularly at foundation level coaching, around that coaching conversation, asking the right question at the right time, holding the space for the right amount of time, and then the coaching session's finished and you go, I hope that I did a good job and that they've done it. And actually a lot of the magic in coaching happens, I don't know, in the run up to the coaching session, that the person's been thinking, I've got a coaching session. I was thinking, you're going to ask me such and such, and this is the solution. I think, well, you didn't know I'm going to ask you that, but you've generated that yourself. And because of this relationship we've got, then actually that's where a lot of the power is. With therapy, it tends to be, I'm trying to solve this problem and now it's solved so we can move on. With coaching, we're not trying to do that. The whole question around, how can you then use that in a workplace context with things like, well, I mean, a lot of stress was experienced over the last year, general well-being, imposter complex, difficult conversations. The truth is that coaching increases psychological safety, and that's where imposter complex is something that comes out of you. Basically, it's an unconscious maybe belief that other people have got it sorted and you haven't. And when you enter into a coaching conversation, your awareness of yourself and others increases, and so you discover that the CEO of the company is a real human being who has the real life experience that everybody else does. And it just so happens that natural skill and hard work and luck has just turned into this particular thing. And that's why the same things happened to me. So maybe I shouldn't have that imposter complex, but you sort of discover it for yourself by sort of anamnesis. And so I think coaching is a very powerful tool to be able to deal with those things. I mean, we've got some tools. No, I haven't got. See, if I had my little PowerPoint presentation up, then I would just leap straight onto my wellbeing slide and show you what that looks like in a coaching conversation, but I don't have it. Does that help, Sean? Was that? Yeah, great, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I see there's another question. I'm about to embark on a coaching course. How do you mobilize coaching across a business effectively? Well, I mean, I think that model that I sort of talked through earlier, that's not a bad place to start at all, because it's quite logical. And so when you're trying to bring people on a journey with you, and so one of the biggest mistakes that happens in organizations is some well-meaning person in HR, typically, not always, but typically in HR, has had coaching themselves or has seen coaching work in another organization, and so wants to bring coaching in, and so is given permission to bring coaching in. Maybe they do a bit of coaching themselves, do a little coaching qualification and start to deliver some coaching. And then when that question's asked around, we've just had a global pandemic, everything's going to lockdown, we're going to be losing all of our revenue, we need to cut some costs. Coaching is an incredibly easy cost to cut. I mean, what it just wasted time. It's pleasant conversations, but we're not paying you to have pleasant conversations. We're paying you to deliver results. And what results does coaching deliver? Most coaches, when they're evaluating the impact of their coaching, measure it through a sort of feedback survey. How likely are you to recommend coaching to your friends? Was this a pleasant conversation for you? Yes or no? Well, I mean, it's just not good enough. If you engage the CFO of an organization in a conversation that says, coaching is capable of delivering extraordinary change where you can affect mindsets and increase performance, what's going to be the best impact that could have in this organization? How would you like us to measure it? And they tell you, and then you focus your coaching on that. And then you measure it, suddenly it becomes justified. And then the CFO will turn around and go, why haven't you done this before? For goodness sake, I'm trying to run a business and you could have helped me. So we want to invest more in coaching. So I do think it's about that. It's about that whole cycle and about recognizing the business impact. It is difficult to measure it a lot of the time, but until you kind of go down that route, it's just nice people having nice conversations. They can be incredibly powerful, but until you don't know. So that was a bit of a ramble as well, wasn't it? I'm not very good at answering questions. Who else has got a question? Sometimes just nice to sit in silence, isn't it?
I was going to say we could have another mindful minute if you like.
Yeah.
Has anyone got any questions about anything? The apprenticeship, the commercial training, Grant Thornton, the weather? No? Okay, so well, just to say thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope you found the session informative. Sean will be sending out the recording of the presentation together with some more detailed information, and if anybody would like to investigate further anything that we've discussed, then I think my contact details were up on a slide before, but my email address, if you are interested, I can be the main point of contact, is sue.k.ledgard, that's Ledgard, what is it, Sue? At uk.gt.com.
I'll include that on the post-event email as well.
Thanks, Sean.
There's a clickable link.
Thank you. So yeah, thanks again, and hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Cheers everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Brilliant.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.